The tension inside the Flagstaff County Courthouse was palpable, so palpable you could practically taste it. A whiff of aged paper and disinfectant lingered in the atmosphere, mingling with the muted hum of voices from the gallery. The beige-painted walls seemed to be narrowing, encasing all the whispered secrets, every breath, every unuttered word. And then those massive wooden doors swung wide. Robyn led the way. She walked slowly, but with a sort of calculated poise. Her navy blue blazer immaculately pressed, her hair drawn back into a tight bun that didn't release a single strand from its place. In her arms, she carried a thin leather folder. Thin. Yet you could tell from the way she held it that it was laden with significance. Her eyes were glassy, already glistening with unshed tears. But her jaw was set. She wasn't going to cry. Not here. Not yet. Kody trailed behind just a step, and the contrast was vivid. His face was white, but his jaw was clamped so hard you could see the muscles in his neck shift. He did not glance at Robyn, not once, not even in that uncomfortable zone beside the door, and in front of their seats where manners might have compelled eye contact. No. He proceeded ahead in a deliberate stride, his leather jacket swinging in slight motion with every sharp footstep, his eyes glued to the judge's bench. They were not here to discuss finances. They were not here to sort out property titles or bicker over Coyote Pass. They were here for the kids. The rumors in the gallery began to swell, like the initial drops of an impending storm. Everyone knew something. Everyone had a theory. Some spoke of custody rights, others of implied threats. But all were certain of one thing: once this trial started, there would be no turning back. Whatever was revealed in that courtroom would be public record, and the Brown family would never be the same. The judge, a silver-haired, gravel-voiced man, looked down at the fat pile of sealed files on his bench. They were labeled confidential in bright red. Somewhere within the files were witness statements, photographs, perhaps even recordings. Proof that would destroy or save either side. Robyn sat down at her table, her fingers shaking just a little as she unfolded her leather folder. On the inside, there was a tidy stack of documents sticking out: birth certificates, medical records, school performance reports. She had been ready for this. She had to be. She wasn't about to lose. Kody sat across the table, his lawyer hunching forward to say something in his ear. Kody did not nod, did not smile, did not even shift his breathing patterns. He simply sat staring forward, the tendons in his hands straining as his fists clenched on the table. The bailiff shouted the room to attention. All rise for the Honorable Judge Whitmore. And thus the din ceased. Silence weighed in like a blanket. The kind of silence that doesn't soothe, it asphyxiates. Judge Whitmore's eyes swept through the courtroom, lingering briefly on Robyn, then Kody. They appeared to weigh him, measure him, as if already sensing the tempest about to be unleashed. He cleared his throat. The case number 22 FC 417. Robyn Alice Brown against Kody Wynn Brown. Petition for sole custody of minor children: Dayton, Aurora, Brianna, Solomon and Ariella Brown. The words were out there. Although everybody knew why they'd assembled here, hearing them verbalized made it true. Robyn's lips compressed. Kody's jaw moved minimally, as though he were gritting his teeth. Robyn's lawyer was up first. She was serene, mannered, and her tone bore just a hint of warmth to be sympathetic. But there was steel behind it. She outlined a vision of security, love and protection, of a mother who had ever put her children first, who had suffered hard times and turmoil, but never wavered in her devotion. But then Kody's lawyer stood up, and the air in the room changed. He spoke with a precision that cut like a knife. He spoke of manipulation, of alienation, of secretive decisions made by the parents that destroyed the children's bond with their father. He intimated, only intimated, at secrets deeper, secrets the court would eventually reveal. And you could sense it in that instant. This was no custody battle. This was war. Robyn edged in her chair, her gaze darting at Kody for a moment. His remained on the judge, but there was an unspoken tension in the way his jaw rippled, something nearly volatile. The first witness list was handed to the judge. There were names on it that made people in the gallery exchange quick, shocked glances. Christine Brown. Janelle Brown. Even Meri's name was there. None of them were in the courtroom yet, but the thought of their testimonies hung in the air like thunderclouds waiting to break. Somewhere towards the middle of all this, Robyn's youngest, small Ariella, sat in the hallway with the court-appointed guardian. Too young to realize the full impact of what was taking place, but not quite old enough not to know her family was tearing apart. The judge pushed up his glasses. Opening arguments, then witness testimony in this court. Both sides are reminded. This is not a theater for unsubstantiated accusations. The court will only receive established claims. But even as he said the words, Robyn and Kody both knew this wasn't about evidence. It was about perception, about whom the judge would end up believing more when the accounts began to conflict. The bailiff moved forward with the initial batch of sealed evidence envelopes. Paper tearing filled the room's silence as the judge opened the top envelope. In it, the first photo slipped out. Robyn blanched. Kody hunched forward, his eyes tightening. Whatever was in that photo, it was going to set the tone for the whole trial. If you believe this is merely a custody battle, just wait until you see what's in that envelope. Everything shifts. The photo scuffling on the judge's bench had been louder in the quiet than it had any business being. Robyn's lawyer inched forward, her expression still serene, but her fingers constricting on her pen. Kody's eyes tracked the judge's, but his face revealed nothing. He had learned years ago that in a courtroom, expressions can be dynamite. Judge Whitmore sat for a long moment, contemplating the photograph. He did not show it to the gallery, but whatever was in it, it caused his brow to wrinkle in the faintest way, like a man who had just entered a building and scented smoke, but could not yet find the blaze. Robyn's fingers lay flat against the table. She wasn't fisting them, but there was a tension at her wrists, like she was holding herself together by force of will. Her mind went back to the day she remembered having that photograph taken. The sun filtering through the blinds. The laughter that wasn't quite genuine. She swallowed dryly. Across from her, Kody's attorney whispered something into his ear. Kody nodded slowly, though his eyes never left the judge. This wasn't just about winning. This was about control. About who would get to decide the next decade of their children's lives. The judge cleared his throat. We'll begin with opening statements. Miss Taylor? Robyn's lawyer stood up, stepping into the middle of the room with deliberate strides. Your Honor, she started, her tone firm but resonant. This is a matter of the welfare of 5 children. Children who have been in the midst of adult strife, exposed to uncertainty, and most importantly, positioned in environments which have jeopardized their safety emotionally. She nodded toward the gallery, her eyes flashing across the handful of reporters in the back row. We will introduce evidence demonstrating consistent, loving care on the part of my client, Robyn Brown. We will also show through recorded incidents and witness accounts that Mr. Brown's conduct has on more than one occasion disrupted the children's education, alienated them from their extended family, and induced severe distress. Robyn's gaze remained locked on her lawyer, but deep down she was yelling for the words to be sooner, louder. This was her time to show she could defend her children. Sometimes the worst part isn't the battle itself. It's realizing how much you'll lose if you lose. When Miss Taylor was done, Kody's attorney rose. Mr. Clarkson was a tall, lean man, with a serenity that could be mistaken for kindliness, until he began to speak. Your Honor, he said, this is not a case of which parent is more loving of the children. Both parents are loving of their children. This is a case of the truth. And the truth is, my client has been systematically driven out of his children's lives by acts of deliberate alienation. He allowed the word alienation to linger in the air before going on. We will show proof of messages, conversations, and decisions by Mrs. Brown that deliberately cut off contact between the children and their father. It is not only hurtful, it's illegal. Kody's jaw relaxed a little as Clarkson talked, but his eyes were tough. He wanted the judge to understand him, not as a defendant, but as a father fighting to be there. The judge nodded, scraping the papers on the desk. We will go with the petitioner's first witness. The name that followed sent a murmur through the room. Christine Brown. Heads in the gallery swiveled. The back doors opened once more, and Christine entered. She wasn't dressed in her cheerful bright TV show hues. Instead, she had on a plain gray dress, her hair tied back in a low pony. Her face was unsmiling, neither warm nor aggressive, but her eyes swept the room with a look that expressed she had a very clear idea where all the landmines lay hidden. She sat down in the witness stand, placed her right hand up, and swore to tell the truth. Robyn's lawyer stepped forward. Christine, can you explain your relationship with the children involved? Christine folded her hands in her lap. I've known them since the day they were born, she said, her voice steady. They've been in my home at my table. I've been to their school plays, birthday parties. I've been there. And in your opinion, who has provided the most consistent care for them over the last year? Christine paused, just long enough to make it seem deliberate. Robyn, she said at last. She's been their central source of stability. Robyn let out a small breath. It was just the first response, but it was something. The lawyer nodded. And can you characterize Mr. Brown's participation during the same time frame? Christine glanced over at Kody. Limited, she replied. He came when it was convenient. Sometimes weeks went by without communication. A murmur swirled through the gallery, cut short by the bailiff. Mr. Clarkson stood up for the cross-examination. He didn't waste any time. Christine, would you say that your relationship with Mr. Brown has been strained since your divorce? Christine smiled weakly, though there was no warmth in the gesture. That's putting it mildly. And you would also agree, Clarkson went on, that your personal feelings toward Mr. Brown could affect how you see him as a parent? Christine's smile faded. When it comes to the children, I see what I see. And I'm telling you what I've seen. Clarkson moved in closer. Isn't it true that you've bad-mouthed Mr. Brown to the children? Christine's face stiffened. I've told them the truth. In court, the truth is never quite what it seems. And often it's the way it's interpreted that counts most. The judge noted, his pen scratching softly across the paper. The interrogating continued back and forth. Christine standing firm, Clarkson pushing harder with every question. By the time she exited the witness box, tension in the room had thickened once more. Up next, Janelle Brown. Kody's gaze softened just a bit when she arrived. But it wasn't love. It was calculation. He understood that Janelle had always been the practical one, the less emotional one, likely to be swayed by feeling over sense. If anyone would be with him, it was her. Janelle was sworn in and seated. Robyn's attorney began with soft questions, inquiring into the children's schedules, school attendance, and overall mood. They've been doing okay at school, Janelle reported. But they've been quieter, more withdrawn. And who do you think they're most at ease with on a day-to-day basis? Janelle paused. They love their mother, she reported. And they love their father. But they're more comfortable when they're with Robyn. Clarkson's cross-examination was more pointed. Janelle, do you remember a discussion last December where you advised Kody to stay away for a while? Janelle's eyebrow wrinkled. I explained to him the children needed time out after a fight. That's not the same as telling him not to be their dad. Clarkson tipped his head, as if storing the response in his mental bank. It's not always what's said in the courtroom that tips the scales. It's the small gaps, the ambiguities that reveal the actual truth. The session was moving quickly, but everyone knew the real blow hadn't landed yet. The witness list still had one more name that could change everything. Meri Brown. The judge looked at the clock, then at the attorneys. We'll take a brief recess before the next witness. As individuals stood and the hum of people's voices returned to the air, Robyn shifted closer to her lawyer, speaking something in an urgent tone. Kody remained seated, his fingers interlocked in front of him, his gaze locked on the witness stand as though already envisioning what words Meri would say. When the bailiff summoned the court back into session, doors opened once more, and Meri entered. She never once looked at Robyn or Kody, but as soon as she settled into the witness box, it was palpable whatever she was going to say was going to change the mood of this trial in some way that no one could ever take back. Meri's heels clicked softly against the hardwood floor as she crossed the courtroom. It wasn't just the sound. It was the way she carried herself. Upright, measured, but not hurried. Like someone walking into a storm they'd been expecting for a very long time. She put her left hand on the Bible, promised to tell the truth, and sat down in the witness chair. Her eyes were tranquil, but a burden rested there, like she had been carrying more than she'd ever allowed anyone to see. Robyn's lawyer, Miss Taylor, came to her first. Meri, can you describe your relationship with the children who are involved in this case? Meri breathed. I've been in their lives since the day they were born. I've been there for birthdays, school projects, Christmas mornings. I've been there even when it was inconvenient. And have you noticed the children's interactions with both parents? Yes. Meri's voice did not shake, but it fell a bit. With Robyn they appear safe. I'm not saying they don't love Kody. They do. But with him of late, there's distance. And tension. What sort of tension? Meri looked over at Kody for a moment. The sort where they have no idea which version of him they will receive. A soft gasp came from the gallery. Kody's hands drummed once on the table, and then remained motionless. A sentence in a courtroom can be more lethal than 100 allegations, because the proper sentence remains planted in the mind of the judge. Miss Taylor went on. Can you provide an example? Meri nodded. Last spring I was at Robyn's house and Kody dropped by unannounced. The kids froze when they saw him. They didn't run to him. They didn't smile. They just waited. Like they were preparing for something. Objection, Clarkson interrupted, rising. Speculation regarding the children's intentions. Overruled, Judge Whitmore told him firmly. The witness may state what she witnessed. Meri's eyes never left the attorney. What I observed was fear. And I'd never seen that before. Miss Taylor let the words hang for a beat before stepping back. No further questions. Clarkson rose, walking slowly toward the witness box. Meri, would you agree that your personal relationship with my client has been complicated? Meri's lips twitched. Almost a smile. But not quite. That's an understatement. And would you also agree, Clarkson asked persistently, that you've had disputes with him on issues that have nothing to do with the children? Of course. But I'm here to discuss the children, not our past. Clarkson's tone grew more acidic. Isn't it a fact that you and Robyn have become closer as a couple in the last year? Yes. Meri answered readily. And isn't it possible, Clarkson went on, that this familiarity has colored your judgment in this case? Meri inched forward just a little, her tone firm. It's affected my need to defend the children. That's it. Sometimes the strongest responses in court aren't boisterous. They're the ones spoken without one single blink. Clarkson didn't blink, but he shifted gears. Meri, are there any times when Robyn has kept Kody from his children? Meri hesitated for the first time. Not that I personally saw, but I have heard the children mention canceled visits. And who informed them that the visits were canceled? I don't know, she replied. But the inflection in her voice indicated she knew something, and wasn't going to tell. Clarkson paused, then got up from his table. No further questions. The judge jotted a note, and then he gazed at Miss Taylor. You have another witness ready? Miss Taylor nodded. Your Honor, the petitioner calls Aurora Brown. A murmur in the room. Aurora was one of the older girls, and until today no one knew whether or not she would be testifying. The bailiff opened the side door, and Aurora entered. She wore nothing fancy, jeans and a sweater, but her shoulders were back, her eyes cast straight ahead. She repeated the oath under her breath. Miss Taylor entered softly. Aurora, how was your relationship with your father? Aurora's lips tightened before she responded. It's complicated. In what way? Sometimes he's wonderful, she whispered. Fun. Warm. Like he actually notices me. And other times, she shrugged. Other times, he's mad. Or he's not here, and you don't know which you're going to get. Kody's face didn't change, but his fists tightened under the table. Is there ever a time when you didn't want to visit your father? Aurora's eyes fell to her lap. Yes. Why? There was a lengthy silence. Because I didn't feel safe. One word in court can resonate more powerfully than 12 exhibits. Clarkson rose to cross-examine, his voice especially gentle. Aurora, you care about your father, don't you? Yes, she replied hastily. And you'd prefer to get along with him? Yes. Then why inform the court you don't feel safe? Aurora paused, her voice trembling. Because love doesn't necessarily mean you're safe. You could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead, because the room was so quiet. Clarkson's eyes turned into slits. But he did not probe further. No more questions. The judge leaned in. The court will be in recess for lunch. We will see you in an hour. The gavel came down, and the air let go all at once. Individuals stood, stretched, whispered back and forth. Robyn shut her folder slowly, her hands still shaking from what Aurora had said. Kody remained seated for a very long time before he finally got up, his eyes scanning the floor as if searching for something only he was able to perceive. But as the lawyers gathered up their documents, Miss Taylor slipped an envelope onto the edge of the judge's bench. Supplemental evidence. It was labeled. Nobody had any idea what was inside. Not yet, but the manner in which the judge regarded it. Brows furrowed just a little. Sent one thing home. Whatever it was, had the capability to blow this case wide open. When the court resumed after lunch, the atmosphere in the room was quiet of a different sort. The sort which does not merely anticipate something to occur. It knows something is on the verge of occurring. Judge Whitmore pushed his glasses up, his eyes lowering to the unopened envelope that lay on his bench. He tapped it once with his pen before he spoke. Before we move to the next witness, the court will read supplemental evidence provided by the petitioner. The bailiff advanced, opening the envelope with a letter opener. A trim pile of printed photos and a USB drive came out onto the judge's bench. He began with the photos. His gaze went over each one slowly, his face a mask. But the tiny furrow in his brow grew deeper with every picture. Then he held up the USB drive. Counsel, what is the content of this recording? Miss Taylor moved forward. Your Honor, the drive holds an audio recording made in the Brown residence 3 months ago. The man on the recording is Mr. Brown, and he is talking to 2 of the younger children.
Lynn.
Clarkson jumped up. Objection to the entry of any recording taken without my client's permission. The judge raised a hand. I will consider admissibility after hearing the basis for the evidence. The bailiff delivered the drive to a court technician, who plugged it into the laptop linked to the audio system in the courtroom. There was a faint crackle before the voices broke through. Child's voice. Dad, why can't we go see Grandma? Kody's voice, edged but not shouting. Because your mother doesn't want you there. She believes she knows best. She doesn't. And if you keep pushing, you're going to make things worse for everyone. Child. But I want to go. Kody, that's it. This is over. You do what I tell you. And you don't argue. The sound clicked off. Sometimes the quietest sound in a courtroom can be the loudest, particularly when it's a parent speaking. The room was quiet. Robyn kept her eyes lowered, her hands crossed tightly in her lap. Aurora waited in the corridor with the guardian. But the words had most obviously been for her. Everyone in the room sensed it. Clarkson rose slowly. Your Honor, out of context that recording is deceptive. My client was reacting to a situation that Judge Whitmore held up a hand. Mr. Clarkson, I will consider that. But the tone, the words used, they are troubling. Kody's jaw clenched, but he held his tongue. His eyes, however, flashed fleetingly toward Miss Taylor, a flash of something, anger, regret, crossing his face. Miss Taylor walked to the bench. Your Honor, the photos included with this recording depict the children's bedrooms, devoid of personal belongings. On the same week that the audio was made, we will have testimony establishing that the children prepared to leave overnight bags anticipating a visit to family, only to be informed at the end of the day they couldn't go. The judge examined the photos for a moment of silence before nodding. Proceed. The next to be called was a down-the-street neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez. She was in her 50s, with warm eyes, but a strong voice. Mrs. Alvarez, Miss Taylor started out. Can you describe what you witnessed on the 14th of March afternoon? I saw the children outside, sitting on the front porch steps, with little suitcases, she said. They seemed to be excited, as if they were leaving somewhere. Then Mr. Brown came by. They went into the house with him. They didn't go back out. Did you talk to them? No. But the following day, I noticed those same little suitcases beside the trash cans, still full. Clarkson's cross-examination was brief. Mrs. Alvarez, you didn't hear any discussion between my client and the children that day, correct? Yes, that's right. So you don't really know why their plans changed? No, but I saw their faces when they returned outside later that evening. They'd been crying. Clarkson hesitated, and then continued. In court, eyewitness testimony is like pieces of a puzzle. Sometimes they only fit when you've seen the larger picture. But the most theatrical moment came next. Miss Taylor summoned an unexpected witness. Your Honor, we call Solomon Brown to the stand. The atmosphere changed. Solomon was young, but old enough that his testimony would be given some credibility. His guardian followed him into the witness box, and the judge assured both of them that rough questioning would not be tolerated. Solomon, Miss Taylor said softly, can you describe the last time you were with your dad before coming to court today? Solomon tugged on the hem of his shirt. It was strange. He was angry with Mom. Not yelling, but angry. Did he say anything to you? Yeah. He told me. He told me if we loved him, we'd tell the judge we wanted to live with him. Kody's eyes blinked shut for the space of a heartbeat. Did that make you uncomfortable? Solomon nodded. I don't want to choose. I just want everything to be fine. And that's the crux of most custody disputes. A child in the middle of a battle she never invited. Clarkson didn't cross-examine. The judge thanked Solomon and dismissed him, ordering the record to record the child's demeanor. It was apparent to everyone in the room. The day's testimony had cut deep. But right when the session was about to close, Clarkson stood up with a serene smile that had the gallery draw closer. Your Honor, before we adjourn for today, the defense would like to enter our own additional evidence. A series of text messages between Mrs. Brown and Christine Brown, dated within the same week the audio recording furnished today. The bailiff went to the judge with a sealed envelope. Clarkson's face remained neutral, but his tone had a slight air of satisfaction when he added, these messages will demonstrate that the petitioner deliberately set up a situation to make my client appear unsuitable, and that Christine Brown was a participant in arranging it. The gallery erupted into murmurs. Christine, still seated near the back, sat very still, but her face had drained of color. Judge Whitmore glanced at the envelope, then at Miss Taylor. We will review this evidence first thing tomorrow. And with that, the gavel struck. The war wasn't over, but the battlefield had just shifted. The next morning, the steps of the courthouse were humming even before the doors opened. Journalists huddled under umbrella coverage, microphones at the ready, hoping to catch a glimpse of Kody, Robyn, or, in yesterday's bombshell, Christine. Aboard the vessel, the atmosphere was similarly charged. The gallery was sardined tightly in there, and the air felt thicker than normal, as if the walls themselves were aware that something major was about to unravel. Judge Whitmore entered, his expression stern. We will begin by reviewing the supplemental evidence submitted by the defense yesterday. Text messages between the petitioner, Mrs. Brown, and Christine Brown. The bailiff passed a thick stack of printed screenshots to the judge, the attorneys, and the court clerk. A flat-screen monitor was wheeled forward for the gallery to follow along. The first messages appeared. March 12th, 3:17 p.m. Robyn. He's taking them on Friday. I don't trust him not to mess with their heads. Christine? So make it blow back in his direction. Robyn? How? Christine? If they believe they are going to Grandma's but he cancels, it'll appear like he's punishing them. It'll get back to the guardian. Robyn? That's dangerous. Christine? Not if you frame the story. The words hung there, suspended like smoke. Kody did not budge, but the slight tremble in his jawline betrayed the storm below. Robyn was a different story altogether, though. Her hand clawed at the edge of the table like it was the only thing holding her in place. The biggest blast in court isn't always from yelling. Sometimes it's silence. Miss Taylor sprang to her feet. Your Honor, this is selective and taken out of context. We do not admit the authenticity of these messages without a proper digital review of forensics. Clarkson remained unflappable. We have already received confirmation from the carrier records, and metadata verifies these were sent from Mrs. Brown's phone to Christine Brown's phone at the time stated, which doesn't prove intent. Miss Taylor snapped back at her. Judge Whitmore leaned back, interlacing his fingers. It does, however, raise grave questions about the events in controversy. Proceed. The next messages appeared. March 13th, 8:02 p.m. Christine? Did they pack? Robyn? Yes. Suitcases by the door. Christine? Good. Just be sure you get the moment when he tells them they can't go. Robyn, I don't believe we're moving on this. Christine, you want the kids safe? Sometimes you have to play the long game. The courtroom was filled with gasps. Even the stenographer hesitated for an instant before continuing to type. Kody's lawyer made the most of it. Your Honor, this establishes the petitioner consciously manipulated things so that the kids would experience emotional distress, and used my client's response as a tool against him. Miss Taylor rose once more, her voice frosty but composed. Or it establishes two women commiserating with one another in exasperation about a behavior pattern that had been hurting those very children for months. Judge Whitmore raped the gavel once. Enough. I will determine how much credence to place in this testimony. But I will not have theatrics in my courtroom. Still, the harm was done, not to the legal position of Kody, but to the believability of Robyn's emotional testimony earlier in the week. The defense's next action was just as deliberate. Your Honor, Clarkson announced, we call Christine Brown to the stand. The whole gallery appeared to be holding its breath as Christine rose to her feet. She moved slowly, her eyes fixed ahead, but her expression unreadable. The moment she was sworn in, Clarkson did not waste any time. Mrs. Brown, did you send these messages? Christine looked at the screen, then Clarkson again. Yes, but they've been stolen. Just yes or no. You sent them? Yes. And you urged Robyn Brown to stage a scenario whereby Mr. Brown would seem to chastise the children? Christine paused. I urged her to defend the kids. By creating an incident for court evidence? Miss Taylor protested. But the judge permitted the inquiry. Christine's tone was strong now. I urged her to capture the manner in which Kody responds. That's not staging. That's telling the truth. And the thing about truth in court is this: it's never pure, and it's never easy. Clarkson pulled a final screenshot from the pile. March 14th, 9:10 p.m. Christine, I understand it's not easy. But if it works, he won't be able to hurt them like he used to. Robyn? I hope so. Christine, I am. Trust me. Christine's gaze locked with Kody's for the first time since she arrived in the courtroom. There was no warmth in it, only something cold and unforgiving. By the time Christine resigned, the atmosphere in the room had changed. Sides were divided more strongly, and the lines between good and evil were more indistinct than ever before. Judge Whitmore ordered a 15-minute recess, but the gallery remained immobile. Individuals remained seated, murmuring, looking back and forth from Kody to Robyn to Christine, as if they could spot the next explosion occurring before it actually did. Because everyone knew, when court reconvened, the day wasn't finished, not even close. Clarkson stood first, adjusting his jacket before strolling into the middle of the well. Your Honor, this case has been intentionally complicated, but at its core it's straightforward. My client, Kody Brown, is a father who has been steadily undermined, demonized, and excluded from his children, not because he is a threat, but because of personal agendas and manipulations that have nothing to do with the well-being of the children. We've heard messages in which Mrs. Brown and Christine Brown schemed to elicit responses for the purposes of the courtroom. We've heard testimony which establishes intent, and we've seen the damage. The children caught in the middle of a story created to use in this courtroom. We are not here to reward strategic cruelty. We are here to determine custody in the best interests of the children. And in this case, that is providing my client with joint legal and physical custody, with access to his children, unfettered. He sat back down without looking at Robyn, his face inscrutable. Miss Taylor stood second, taking a deep breath before she started. Your Honor, what we've witnessed here is the same thing my client has lived for years. A pattern of control, intimidation, and emotional volatility that is invisible until you live it. Yes, we have seen exchanges between my client and Christine Brown. Yes, they were plotting, not against Mr. Brown, but to leave a paper trail that would finally get this court to understand what the children go through behind closed doors. You've heard about last-minute cancellations, you've heard about broken promises, and you've heard about the confusion and distress this has caused the children. This is not a game. This is not a score to be settled. This is about keeping children safe from turmoil they did not create. And I urge you, Your Honor, to award full custody to my client with supervised visitation for Mr. Brown until a counselor gives the children a seal of approval. She lowered herself slowly into the chair, her hand momentarily touching Robyn's arm. The judge regarded them. Tomorrow, this court will hear all the evidence, testimony, and relevant statutes before making a decision. Because of the sensitive nature of the evidence brought out over the last 48 hours, I will take this case into advisement and make a ruling on Monday morning at 9 a.m. A groan rose from the gallery, set the frustration of having to wait. But it was the only legal move that made sense. The moment the gavel fell, Kody stood up. Robyn would not look at him, and he did not attempt to address her. He instead strode hastily toward the door, reporters in his wake. Christine hung back in the rear row, chatting softly with someone in the gallery. When Robyn finally passed by her, Christine spoke some indistinguishable sound, too low for the microphones to pick up. But Robyn's shoulders tightened in response. "Say it again," Robyn said, half turning. Christine's face didn't alter. "I said, the truth does come out, even if it's painful." Robyn's face nearly screamed that she was going to respond. But Miss Taylor held her arm and guided her toward the courthouse doors. Outside, the atmosphere was pandemonium. Microphones pushed forward, camera flashes popping, questions shooting from all sides. "Kody, do you believe the text will damage Robyn's case? Robyn, is Christine lying? Christine, are you taking Kody's side?" None of them replied. Kody got into a black SUV without a word. Robyn kept her head down, hurrying into her lawyer's car. Christine melded into the crowd. The last shot of the day was the courthouse itself, standing silently over the darkening horizon, as if it somehow possessed the answer everyone was so willing to hear. And now, all one could do was wait until Monday. We'll be here the moment that verdict comes down. And trust me, you won't believe the judge's ruling. Because it won't just determine custody, it could determine the future of the entire Brown family.